Really, what I want to say is no matter how you slice and dice these figures, this project is over budget. It's not affordable, it never has been, and it doesn't make sense. Not if you're worried about the environment, not if you're committed to sustainability, and not if you think the purpose of a transportation system is to get people where they need to go in the most cost-effective way. This project has never been affordable. Right from the beginning, modest alternatives like the Arbutus Corridor or Rapid Bus were taken arbitrarily off the table. The creme de la creme didn't like the Arbutus Corridor for rapid transit. That left Canby. But the only way to ensure political peace was to promise a tunnel. Never mind that the cost of tunneling would at least be double a surface system. After all, political peace is priceless. From then on, this project has been rammed through. Somebody someday ought to write a book about RAV, about all the players and all the reasons that RAV is getting rammed through. But we all know that at the end of the day, transportation issues, pure and simple, is not what is driving RAV.
Ron, I'm going to be voting against today, and the reason I'm voting is that I am very disappointed that the executive summary only is released in regard to the value for money report. I think the public is being denied an opportunity to look at all of the details in relation to this project. And in fact, by failing to give the public all of the details, there isn't an opportunity for effective criticism of the value for money case that's being made. I think it is one of the most disappointing parts of this process that so much is cloaked in secrecy, that there's a lack of transparency, that the public-private partnership formula that is being used by the board is effectively denying the public an opportunity to look at how their money is being spent.
I agree with the frustration at not being able to disclose information because all of the board members will painfully remember the trolley bus procurement process, where there were bits and pieces of information, some true and not anywhere near that, were out there, and they were being delightfully spun in the press, and we were made to look like absolute fools until finally we were able to disclose all of the information, and then suddenly there was no more press on that issue at all.
First of all, I want to preface my remarks by saying that it's very, very difficult as the Director of TransLink to respond on a lot of these issues simply because there is so much we are not allowed to talk about that we in fact become fearful of saying the wrong thing and therefore putting ourselves and I guess the process at risk. I can feel for the people that go to FOI and receive pages of blacked out things. I've got a whole report here that is grayed out, so I guess we're a little further ahead than you are, but it's still difficult.
So no matter how you slice and dice it, RAV costs too much. The winning bid came in at $343 million over budget. Think about how the media, the Board of Trade, other factors reacted to when the fast ferries were nearly over that much. Everyone screamed about things being over budget. But in this case, nothing to worry about. It's to be expected. It's worth every penny and more. And now we're told the funding gap is closed. TransLink is going to pick up more of the tab. Selling assets and downloading costs add up to picking up more of the tab. The last time I was here, TransLink directors distinctly said they were going to put a cap on the public expenses. That included the provincial government, that includes TransLink. One director said, if it costs $1 more, we'll kill it. It's that simple.
Clearly, I tried to put a compromise position forward at the second vote, and it failed. And I think it was a lack of understanding of what I was trying to accomplish at that meeting. But at the third vote, I think at that point in time, the directors did understand, and it gave us this opportunity today. The intent of that motion, for some extra clarity, was that it be brought back before this board, not that the $1.35 billion was the cap, the solid cap that none of us would cross, at least not from my intent. It was so that the decision could be made by this board on what components could be used to close a gap, if there was a gap. And I have to say that Part of the spin has been that this is over budget, or there's cost overruns is the terminology being used. Well, I generally don't categorize unspent funds as cost overruns. We haven't made that decision yet. Until it's spent, how could it be a cost overrun?
Well, the proof is in. This project doesn't work as a P3. It increases the cost. It puts the taxpayer on the hook for the next 30 years to pay back the company's measly $200 million investment and to give it some profits. So the chickens are going to come home to roost on this. Property taxes are going to soar. Bus riders will bear the brunt of ever-increasing fares. To me, there's no question RAV will in the end cannibalize the bus system. And as we all know, buses are the backbone of our transportation system.
You are willing to spend a huge amount of our capital on one project, our precious capital, on a project that has huge uncertainties and is highly likely to go even more over budget than it has already before the first shovel has gone into the ground. A worldwide review of major large projects found that 70% of them were well over budget. A recent review by accountants in the UK found that private financing initiatives don't return value. But this does not seem to faze you.
I actually compliment the federal government, the provincial government, for putting the money forward to allow us to build a metro system that we so desperately need. And I really believe that P3s are a wonderful thing.
There are many uncertainties, but what do we know for sure? Many uncertainties in RAB, but we do know some things. First, we know that before starting to build the project, it was so over budget, so over your limit that you set, that you had to scrap portions of it or have the taxpayer absorb those costs by picking them up.
And when it comes to the guarantees of our income and the guarantees of the revenue streams, there is not one of us sitting at this table who is elected that has a guarantee that we will have a job December 05. You know, that's simple reality. And it's also right for those who are in the audience that are clapping, because we don't have guarantees of our job. We don't have guarantees of our health. We don't have guarantees of those whole things. We hopefully calculate and operate wisely on that.
Increasing ridership from 40,000 to 100,000 is very, very ambitious. You are way behind in buses. The 2000 plan called for 1,600 buses by 2005. We had 1,100 buses. I'm sorry, the 2000 plan called 1,600 buses in 2005. We had 1,100 buses in the year 2000, and in 2004 we have 1,140 buses. Today you are 460 buses behind where you plan to be in the year 2000. 460 behind. This project has been power politics at its worst. No other huge project would get revived from the grave twice. You were not given the same choices that you were in the Northeast Corridor, and you haven't given Richmond what it wants. Please make a decision that gives the taxpayer and the transit rider what we want. Please don't shut the door in our face. Thank you.
Realistically, the ridership is there on our metro system.
Since the original project announcement, the costs have risen dramatically. We were told 1.2 billion originally. The province pegged its contribution to 300 million, then to 400 million, now to 465 million. This is not their money, this is our money. When will they stop? They've basically effectively paid for cost overruns before the project has even dug a shovel full of dirt. Now I want to talk about ridership. And this is so bogus, it's unbelievable. And we're on the hook. This is our biggest risk here as taxpayers in this region. 90% of what's not going to show up in those fare boxes is going to come out of the region's residents' pockets. Detroit's downtown people mover was projected to carry 67,000 riders. 10 years later, only 7,000 daily riders show up. In Las Vegas, we have a line sitting because of some faulty problems. 6 weeks now at $85,000 a day loss to the community. And I want you to read now what the Nevada Journal wrote about, this was 3 years before that line was completed. Perhaps the most important reason the major transit facility ridership projections have not improved is that there's no compelling reason to do so. Transit projections have not been prepared for genuine investment purposes. Transit ridership projections have largely been used to justify allocation of federal funding or to promote transit projects to local officials or voters. In all of these government projects, when the project's projected passengers fail to materialize, no individual investor loses money. Government agencies simply make up the deficit with subsidies, and those subsidies are these taxes and levies that you have the power to inflict upon us. Virtually all transit facilities rely on government subsidies for 100% of their capital or construction costs. The consequence is that in public transit there is significantly less appetite for the kind of realistic, candid analysis that intelligent private investors always demand before risking their own capital. We are risking $1.76 billion here. And rather than seeing good money flush out the bad, we keep pouring our money in. Junk analysis tends to displace the accurate and rigorous. When it is clear that powerful patrons want government assistance for a public transit project, unrealistic but expensive reports soon appear. They dispense exaggerated accounts of the need for the project and its supposed benefits, then proceed to coolly offer just the ridership forecast necessary to justify the project. And if you look at the figures, by God, don't they just come in just break even? But it's not going to happen that way. My figures show $27 million a year will be needed out of our pockets in 2010 for the next 10 years to subsidize the ridership that will not come to this line.
And I really believe that P3s are a wonderful thing. We have a P3 in Coquitlam with an ice arena, and it is absolutely tremendously successful. We're caught in a corner right now where we need more ice, and we're able to buy more ice from that 3P. And so sometimes 3Ps actually do work.
There are other ways to do this cheaper, but there again, like I said, and like the Las Vegas people have said, there are private interests that want this more than the public. And I want to just sum up what they said about Las Vegas. The jovial, winking commingling of public authority and private benefit is an old story in Las Vegas. Some would even call it the city's unique style or tradition. But in fact, it's just a leftover from the dusty early days when sad scams, bootlegging, turning tricks, or fleecing the passing through rubes were the only way people could think of themselves alive under the broiling Mojave sun. If you want to become a world-class city, you have to get up above those dusty days of Las Vegas. We want this to be a public project, and what you're offering us here is $200 million from a private sector that's not free, that we will pay more than if you borrowed it from the public source. Thank you very much.
It really does not matter which way I vote today from a public perspective. I lose or win votes. I'm a leader or I'm a loser. I've listened to the people or I've ignored the people. Emails come in for and against. So if I was to poll, I would say, depending on the area that you live in, it's high or low support. Clearly, even the North Shore is mixed. Monday night, there were 3 council resolutions, 2 in favor of RAV to go forward, 1 opposed. And even if one could say, well, it was the largest of the 3 municipalities that said don't go forward, by a numbers game, the other 2 make up about the same amount of people. But I would suggest that by maybe an assessed value, seeing as everybody's talking about assessed value, that in fact those other 2 probably pay more into the system than the one that opposed it. So now what do you do? Well, the one that opposed it made their decision not with all the facts, despite my effort to provide some of the facts.
From the beginning, we've said that we believe that the transit system in the Lower Mainland needs to be rebuilt, that infrastructure certainly has the support of us, as many others, but as we've said from the beginning, this is what we believe to be a very bad business plan. As speakers have said prior to me, there has really been no information. Really don't feel very good about the decision that you're about to make. And I've said to some people that, 2 out of 3 didn't do it. And unfortunately, I think the ideology of a public-private partnership has been drilled into your minds from the provincial government. I want to say that very clearly, that there's something more to this than I think the public will know. And perhaps at the end of the day, we will find out all of the kinds of things that have happened as a result. I don't want to spend very much time because, quite frankly, I'm disgusted with this process. It's unfortunate that this needs to go forward so quickly. I don't think that half of the directors here actually know all of the facts that need to be done to make sure that the Lower Mainland has an affordable, accessible transit system. I'm actually of the belief that this could have been done much better. It would have been very nice for myself and other members in my union, as well as the public, to come forward and support a transit system that would work. We don't think this transit system will work for the Lower Mainland. We've made all the predictions that need to be made, and unfortunately, all of the kinds of things that have been put forward that will, I think, make a difference haven't worked. So with that, I guess we'll be back someday talking about a transit system that we're going to pay for, my children will pay for, and your children will pay for. But with respect, I think you're making the wrong decision. And unfortunately, as I said earlier, I'm a politician who is able to count, and we've counted, and we understand that this is going to go forward. And God help us all, because I really think the decision that you have made to put this public-private partnership in place is nothing less than a sham for British Columbians. Thank you very much.
Elsie Dean, and then Ian Bullock.
And we have previously opposed this line, both in letter and in appearance before you. We continue to be alarmed that this is brought back again because the costs keep going up, and even though the provincial government seems to think they can find some money because they have a surplus, but let me inform you that their surplus came from the very poorest people in this province. $650 million came out of the social services budget. Many more came out of the children's budget, came out of the protection of women's budget, and now they say they can spend this money and put it back into a RAV line that it seems to me most people who have studied it are quite opposed. So I would also like to say that because of this downloading of costs onto poorer people and low-income people, we absolutely cannot afford an increase in fares on the buses. All I can say is urge you to turn it down. It's not a good system, as you've heard from many, many more people. Thank you.
Ian Bullock, and then Frank McGreal.
I think we have serious concerns about the P3 option. There's a very great possibility that very precious tax dollars may be diverted into subsidizing a private corporation. And lastly, there is, of course, the question of overall cost. This was raised by a number of other speakers. There is, again, the very real possibility that if this project goes ahead, much needed transit dollars will be diverted from necessary projects, necessary areas such as the Broadway corridor, such as downtown Vancouver, such as improving bus services, which you're all certainly aware the vast majority of transit users rely on, that those needs won't be met. So I would certainly urge you to rethink this project and to essentially say that it won't necessarily meet those goals which the project sets out. And I think if your intention is to meet those goals, to improve the environment, to reduce congestion, to improve bus service, RAV may not be the way to go if those are the goals you want to achieve. And I would certainly concede that your board and TransLink has those aims at heart. Thank you.
Frank McGreal and then Gordon.
I hope TransLink also believes in fiscal responsibility. But when I hear that the board seriously considers moving ahead with the Cambie RAV project without seeming to give consideration to the Arbutus alternative, the Arbutus alternative, which cuts half to $750 million off the price tag of the project, I begin to wonder if the TransLink board does have a commitment to fiscal responsibility. The difference between the cost of the Cambie RAV and the Arbutus alternative is, of course, the elimination of the tunnel in the Arbutus case. To invest this enormous amount of money in a tunnel when a non-tunnel, cheaper alternative exists, to me, is the height of irresponsibility.
Don't allow yourselves to be bullied. Set the standard for integrity. Vote no for the RAV line.
Ann Grant and then Donna Rennie.
Of course, I'm in favor of public transit, but not this project. And the bottom line for me is, why are the citizens of the region and of BC being blackmailed with our own money in a rush to provide this public transit, which we don't think is a good project? And I think the answer, a number of people have given us the answer, that this is private interests. This, we were told, this has nothing to do with the Olympic bid, but of course we must have it for 2010. So that's a bit funny, isn't it now? We must please the business people, and we must have our P3. That's very important. So I'm adding my voice that we aren't doing this for the public. We're not doing it for public transit. And the public are supposed to be grateful for getting the crumbs that fall from the table in this project, even if it's bad. And I'd like to see transit projects and other public projects properly financed with tax money collected with progressive taxes. And of course, we need a good public transit system. I really wish you would stick to your resolution and vote no, though I fear the worst. Thanks.
Donald Rennie.
And it's often divisive, and don't we know it in the labor movement. If this project had not been a 3P, I don't think you would have had the trouble that you have. Necessarily, we were forced into it, and you got this before you. The TransLink Center, Capilano filtration, none of these have been in the public eye like this project. And it's unfortunate that we were forced into this position. I want to say that the building trades stand with our brothers and sisters in the public sector directly opposed to the use of the 3Ps on this project or any other where it concerns the privatization of public sector work.
Good morning, Rick Atkinson. I'm the president of Tourism Vancouver, which is the Greater Vancouver Convention and Visitors Bureau. Had an opportunity to speak before you at the third vote, and so we'll be brief this time. We spoke then about the decisions that seem to imply we're going to focus on moving people rather than moving vehicles, and that we commend. But Clearly, you've all put a great deal of time into this, and we respect that. We are a member of the Coalition for Lower Mainland Rapid Transit Solutions, and that group with 34 members from all parts of the region has worked and watched closely what's been going on here, and we know that despite the angst, the amount of time and effort and deliberation that has gone on is something that the people in Greater Vancouver respect and appreciate.
The City of Vancouver, a beautiful place, and somebody mentioned, I don't know if it was in the paper or in a letter that I received, says, when I travel, I never tell people I'm from Richmond or Burnaby or Pitt Meadows. I tell them I'm from Vancouver, because they appreciate what a beautiful city that is. And yet we're going to take the RAV line and hide it underground, so those people who are coming from the airport to the City of Vancouver cannot see it. Now, I don't know if Mr. Antonson has a problem with that, because he's in tourism. Wouldn't you want all the fine people coming to the city to see the city and not the side of the tunnel wall?
We think that clearly there is a time when elected officials are called upon to think beyond their civic mandate and indeed take decisions far beyond your individual tenure. And this would appear to be one of those times. And we encourage you to move forward with support of the RAP project. And we thank you for the opportunity to appear before you. And good luck with your deliberations and decision.
We have had 2 directors on this board that have said, if it's $1 over 1.35 million, I walk.
Okay, Don, directors are playing. Let's stay on the issue.
I am right on the issue,
yeah,
Mr.
but
Chairman.
Don't criticize board members.
I didn't mention any names, and if they want to make commitments, public commitments, then they should be held to account to stand for them. The provincial government gave us $65 million recently, $65 million of everybody's money. I live in a small community that's held hostage by a bridge when it opens, quite often doesn't close again. I have had to answer to people who have said, I saved up for years to take my family to Hawaii. The bridge opened, I missed my plane, I missed our vacation. And that is not the worst thing. The worst thing would be if that bridge opens, doesn't close, and somebody dies because they can't get to Royal Columbian. $65 million would replace 2/3 of that bridge. $343 million would buy us 3 bridges. No, I'm not going to be around. But if I'm wrong, wherever I am, I will come forward and say I'm wrong, and I would challenge the directors that will support this, if they are wrong, to come forward too, because I think it's time. I think it's time we start taking responsibility for how we vote. So,
this program depends on viewer support. Send your contribution to VCTA 2088 Pandora Street, Vancouver, BC, V5L 1N2.